For public comment. This meeting is being recorded. If anyone wants to leave public comments, please do so in the chat by 9 a.m. Evelyn, it's all yours. If you want to start the meeting, we have a quorum.
Yeah, let's get started. All right. So good morning, everyone. So let me start with our EDI statement. The trustees of the Boston Public Library reaffirm our commitment to, our commitment to racial equity and to principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion more broadly. The library is formally committed to becoming an anti-racist organization in response to systemic racism, inequity, and injustice prevalent in our society. We acknowledge also that the Boston Public Library Central Library stands on land that was once a water-based ecosystem, providing sustenance to the indigenous people Massachusetts, and is a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among nations. We are committed to land acknowledgements for all our locations at which we operate. We affirm this commitment to set the context of our planning, deliberations, and public engagement so that they take place from the spirit of welcome and respect found in our motto, free to all. All right. Let's do a roll call. We have a time limit here. I want to go through the votes first. So let's go through the roll call, Pamela.
Yep, I'm just going to read your last names. I have Arana Ortiz.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Both Jeff Hawkins and John Hyler will be absent today. David Leonard.
Here.
And Rush.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. First vote is approval of the special meeting minutes of December 19th. I'm not going to do a roll call. Everybody had a chance to review. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of December 19th.
Any discussion? If not, any abstentions? Any no's? And then everybody, all yes, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
So moved.
So can I get a vote to approve? I need to get a vote to approve. So, oh no, I already did. Sorry. Okay. I'm trying to go too fast and forgetting my things. All right. David, Emily, budget updates.
Thank you. Good morning, trustees. We'll keep this one brief for you as well. I wanted to take a couple minutes this morning just to give a brief update on the library's FY25 budget request to the city. The direction that we received while we were drafting the budget was to focus on a maintenance budget, still keeping in mind any contract increases that we had for the upcoming year. Overall, the operating budget request came in at about 2%, about a 2% increase, most of which we found in the salary line. You see here on this slide just a quick comparison of the current fiscal year and what we're proposing for FY25. I do want to note these are still drafts. We're still working with the city, so we don't have our final figures yet. So the first line that you see there is the actual budget coming from the city for our operating funds, and then external funding, the separate line, affiliate funding that we receive and we're planning to budget for the year from the affiliates, and also the primary philanthropic donations from the BPL fund, trust funds, Library for the Commonwealth, state aid, enterprise funding, other things that we find in our external budget there. Next slide, Jay, please. The other components of our overall submission to the city, it included some new investment proposals that we offered as well. The areas that we chose to focus on for next year were right here: the safety and security, social work, youth services, facilities, and then a couple particular areas of need within facilities and IT. And then also the capital project submission for the budget. And here we've laid out the current project list as it stands. Everything's still draft. We've been having some great conversations back and forth with our colleagues with the city, but it's going to be a few weeks anyway before we have any other updated information. Any questions from anybody?
So the prior on the prior slide, you had the maintenance budget, right?
Correct.
That does not include these investments that you're asking for?
Is not. So that FY 25, we can skip back again, sorry. That 49,308,000, that would just be the maintenance budget, including the contract increases that we plan for. And the investment proposals are all separate.
And then what did you do a swag at the investment proposals? Like how much do you need?
You know, it's some rough ideas of what we'd like to focus on. We don't have any hard figures to share right now.
Okay.
Some themes that, you know, we wanted to focus on for next year. And we're working with the city to see what might be possible.
Okay.
Yeah, there are, Evelyn, a couple of the projects within the facilities and IT area that would be financed over multiple years. So it becomes complicated to say exactly what the ask is, but you know, if we got something in the several $100,000 to sub $1 million in additional funding, that would be great. But we don't have a good sense of whether any of that is realistic or possible. But we were at least on record as saying, look, these are areas of need based upon staff analysis that would be important to continue to support. So.
Yeah, because I mean, the reason I ask is like the logical next question is, okay, so you want to do these things. So how much is the incremental ask? But I think at this point where you're looking is confirmation that these are the right areas to invest on, I'm guessing, before you put the number together.
We have put them together as a menu for the city, and we will bring back to the full board and to finance and audit the detail that can move forward prior to the May meeting. We did want to update trustees this morning as we had briefed the executive committee on these numbers in January when we were in the middle of the submission preparation. And as I think you can see, safety, security, social work really relate to, you know, fundamentals of running the operation, whereas the last 2 years and even longer than that have more focused on public-facing positions in terms of additional increments. So we need to rebalance really. So this would be great if we get one or more of these areas funded.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Any questions from my fellow trustees?
Can I just get a reminder in terms of the various union contracts? Are there any negotiations going on right now with respect to those? Or I feel like those all got settled in the last year.
They did, but they were retrospective contracts. So
Okay.
both contracts are currently out of term.
Okay.
And we are, I would say, in active and in the middle of negotiations with both our ASME colleagues and our PSA colleagues right now. As usual, those are led by City of Boston OLR representatives with ourselves. And the practice is that once those are settled, any new financial commitments or obligations stemming would be added back into our maintenance or final budget. So we do not need at this point in time to calculate what those funds, those additional funds might be. We would, of course, love to see them both settled as early as possible. And so it is entirely possible that the budget for next year that will start July 1, it would be possible that if one or more contracts were settled, those numbers would grow to account for that.
A fair amount of the 2% increase that we found in our maintenance budget as well for next year is because of the retroactive agreement. So that was part of it.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So next, E-rates. We have a bunch of E-rates. Emily?
Would we can read through them. We do have Keith Gillette on the line as well. If anyone has any specific questions on any of these, their annual votes that we go through for E-rate, we put out the bids to receive the services, and then there's a grant that we'll be applying for once these votes are able to
Yeah.
move.
If we can have Keith just do a quick recap.
Certainly, I'm happy to. Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Keith. Good morning.
The three E-rate bids that you're seeing or contracts that you're seeing on this slide are for our network connectivity. And there's a fourth that is an infrastructure upgrade. So these first three provide Boston Public Library with first our internet access, so our connection to the outside world. The second is for connectivity between us and currently the city and a data center. So it provides a high-speed connection to the data center where we have had disaster recovery and where we plan to move our primary servers that BPL still hosts. And then the third is the redundant connectivity between all of our sites to connect to our central network and the servers that we host in-house, as well as then out, of course, to the internet for access, both for staff and patrons. Each of these went out for bid and received one response from the Department of Innovation and Technology at the City of Boston, who has been our provider for, I'm not sure, the past decade, I believe.
Okay. Any questions around these? No? Okay. Thank you, Keith.
Yes, and if you'd like me to speak to the fourth,
Yes,
and
could you? Yes.
sure. Is that on the next slide? Could we
Evelyn, can I
advance
just
that?
say Evelyn, can I just say one thing? The next one is actually a recommendation vote. I'd rather you do the two slates.
Okay.
Oh, I
Approval
thought
one
these
and the
were approval votes. Oh, these are recommendation votes.
No,
Oh.
the first three that he just mentioned are approval votes. The next one is a recommendation because it's larger.
Okay.
Okay, got it. All right. So Linda, any question? Let me do a motion. Can I get a motion?
Can I make a motion to approve all three votes in one?
Okay. Any questions?
No questions here.
Okay. So all in favor?
I think I
Aye.
need someone to second.
Aye.
I'll second it. Aye.
Great. Aye.
Eh,
They are approved.
okay, got it. Thank you. All right, now we move to the next.
Thank you.
So these are for approval, just, are these for recommendation or approval, Pamela?
These are for approval. He's talking about the next, the fourth E-rate is a recommendation vote. So that's
Oh, yeah, because there's one, yeah, but there's another page for that.
correct.
Okay,
I
got
thought that's what you were talking about, the fourth E-rate.
it. Okay, got it. Okay,
I didn't
okay.
want to loop it into an approval vote.
Oh, okay. All right, Keith, let's talk about this digital signage.
Certainly, this is digital signage software. So this is a request for proposals that we put out to replace the digital signage control software, which takes content, basically slides for that we display on the TV screens, the digital signs that we have at Central, throughout Central, as well as many of the branches. That current digital signage software was designed, custom software that was designed for the 2015-16 renovation of the Boylston building. The company that produced it has since gone out of business, and it has not been a maintainable solution for us. So we've been keeping it working, but have been working on alternatives to it. It should be noted that the actual cost for this replacement software, which will allow us a distributed workflow to allow individual content providers, including some external providers, to submit content, then to be approved by our communications department to make sure it meets our patron standards and our design standards, and then be assigned to be displayed on any of those digital signs that are mounted throughout our facilities. It should be noted that this is a partnership with the Mayor's Youth Council, the Office of Youth Engagement and Advancement. We actually have a significant grant from Youth Lead the Change that dates back many years, and have a signed memorandum of understanding that will cover the entire cost of this procurement, and as well as additional funding to allow us to expand our digital signage. But it is a contract that Boston Public Library would enter into with HyperSign was the vendor out of 5 that submitted proposals, as I recall, to provide this hosted digital signage solution.
So the 54,000, is that for the full value of the 5-year contract, or that's the yearly value?
That is the full 5-year cost.
Okay. All right. Any questions from trustees?
I must say, it's really exciting to see this finally move forward. It has been a long stalled project, and one that, as Keith has noted, was surfaced by one of the youth engagement projects with the city. So it's really great to see this finally hit a milestone.
Yeah, this is great. Fantastic. Thank you.
Is this, Keith, quick question. This I think you stated that. I just want to make sure that I recorded in my brain. This allows you to just, customize, not customize, but your displays, it's at your control, or is it at the company's control?
No, it is entirely at our control. They're providing a software platform that allows us to, have a list of all of the digital signs, all of the TVs that are displaying, and then a catalog of content, of slides or videos that we would want to display, and match them up on a timed basis, for example. Yes.
Yeah, so they give you the platform and then you tailor as needed.
Correct. We're providing all of the content or approving all of the content. The company is only providing a platform, not directing the content.
Excellent. All right. Any further questions? If not, we'll just take just go to the Book of Psalms. So any questions? No. All right, Book of Psalms, Miss Beth.
Good morning, everyone. So the library is currently redrafting both our collection development policy and the charter for Special Collections Committee, both of which include our process for acquisitions. Today, I'm bringing forward a temporary process for significant acquisition in rare books. And the point is to maintain transparency while we establish more permanent processes. This particular acquisition, we're using a restricted trust fund that came through a bequest in 2017 for Italian materials. There's currently $484,000 available for spending of a multi-million-dollar trust. This purchase, I just would like to note, also goes toward our commitment to collections purchasing for this fiscal year, which enables us to meet our state aid requirements. Jay Michella, our curator of rare books and manuscripts, is also on this call for any specific questions about the item.
My major question is, as you guys draft our charter, or re-charter the special collections, was this discussed with the special collections committee?
Yes, so the charter itself is actually going through the process of being redrafted with the entire committee right now.
Yeah, but was the purchase discussed with the committee?
No, we did not discuss the purchase with the committee.
Is that going to be problematic?
I think we're moving away from having the Special Collections Committee be integral to individual purchases, and so there will be a new process put forward once the policy is ready. So they are certainly aware of that. In the absence of the formal process, because of the size of the purchase, it defaults to finance and audit to approve based upon leadership's recommendation.
All right, because I mean, yeah, no, I'm fine. So is the planned charter that it's been discussed is to have the special Collections Committee create guidelines as to, I don't know, what are
Criteria, right.
priorities, and then, but then it's up to the library to decide, you know, as long as it meets that criteria, then purchase.
So the Special Collections Committee in the charter as it exists now, so the collection development policy will determine the criteria under which the library collects materials. The Special Collections Committee in the new charter does not have acquisitions as part of their mandate, but they will be talking internally about how to amplify the collections that we have, working on sort of what are partnerships and ways that we can promote those collections. But the acquisitions portion, the operational piece of our work, will not go through that committee, and that is the charter that is going forward. And they have seen that without that, with no explicit acquisitions language in it. So they are aware there is no acquisitions responsibility.
All right, no, and the reason, just for the trustees and, you know, members of the public who are listening to this, you know, since I've been in the board, you know, these items come up, you know, for approval. I just want to make sure that, you know, we're not rubbing or stepping out of policy. So I appreciate the explanation, Beth.
Yeah, and I think the original formation of the Special Collections Committee, which did not exist in its even recent configuration in perpetuity, was a stopgap probably about 15 years ago to a lack of defined policy and procedure governing, in particular, acquisitions. And so, with this new policy coming forward, we're finally bringing that cycle to conclusion. As long as we have the right checks and balances and guidelines in place on a go-forward basis.
Okay, all right. Any additional questions from my fellow trustees?
Well, I would love to hear the story behind this particular fascinating.
I will ask if Jay Michelle can join us to give a brief description of the why.
Sure, Beth, thanks. I'm glad to do that. So this is an extremely historically significant book. It is printed in 1513, and it represents the first book printed in any African language. Specifically, it's printed in Ge'ez, the classical liturgical language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. We're particularly interested in it because it represents a moment of profound scholarly exchange between Africa and Europe at a very important date. And I think with many of the other firsts in our collection that are more inward looking, this would particularly nicely fit in with our existing collections.
Very nice.
Can I just ask any concerns about the sort of ownership of it, given its history?
That's a great question. So one of the reasons that this book and this copy is so attractive is that it has an incredibly well and long documented provenance going back unbroken over a century, and actually several centuries before that. So this is as safe as I think an antiquarian book can be when being purchased, ethically speaking.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Senator? No?
No, as a history teacher for many, many, many years now, fascinating, and really appreciate the background, and would like to delve in it more moving forward at some point. But I've been teaching history for 30 years now, I think. So, so that's great. I love hearing the history.
We'd be delighted to have you come see it anytime.
I was gonna say, I think, Mike, you're looking for a special viewing.
You know, I'd be honored, and if it would be okay, I would extend the invitation to colleagues in the legislature, if possible. That would be all right.
Absolutely, we would be
Okay.
happy.
Once
That'd be
we actually
awesome.
acquire it, right?
Excellent. We have a date. We have a date. Okay.
We have a date.
We have a date. Excellent. All right. Let me just have these approved by a lot. So we have the Signage software as well as the 1513 Book of Psalms. Can I get a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve both
Second?
those.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any abstentions? Any no's? Okay, excellent, approved. Thank you so much. All right, the following votes are recommendations to go to the full board. And Keith, you're back on the docket.
Very good, thank you. The E-rate MBLN core network switch replacement is a recommendation vote to enter into a contract with E+ Technologies, which has been a long-time vendor of network equipment as well as managed services to Boston Public Library, to provide 6 Cisco switches to replace the decade-old Cisco switches that we currently have, which are reaching end of life I believe, the beginning of next year. So they will no longer be receiving maintenance updates or security updates. So we would be replacing these core network switches, which basically form the backbone of the network that I sort of sketched earlier with regard to the connectivity E-rate RFPs. 2 of them would go as redundant switches in our Copley data center, which is the heart of the network. 2 of them would go in the Markley data center, and then 2 in a disaster recovery site. It should be noted that contract amount there is the total amount. This is subsidized by E-rate at 85%. So the actual amount that BPL would be paying, assuming that the E-rate reimbursement goes through, is substantially less at about $40,678. I welcome any questions.
All right, any questions? No? All right, Emily and Joshua, let's talk about security guard contract.
Thank you. Our current 3-year security contract is just about to expire. So earlier this year, we put out the RFP for a new 3-year contract, and I will toss this to Director of Operations, Josh, to talk through the bid process.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, so we did receive quite a lot of bids for this contract in comparison with historically. When we've seen this in the past, we've received probably 3 or 4. This year we got almost a dozen bids. In the end, excuse me. In the end, it really came down to 2 contractors that had fit all of the qualifications. The first was Securitas, who is our current provider, and the second is Universal. You may have seen them. They used to be known as Allied Universal. Now they're just Universal Protection. Ultimately, we would like to go with Universal Protection for a number of reasons. The first is the big commitment they have to diversity, equity, and inclusion, both in their training programs, their employee experience program, and their hiring. They have a focus on EDI across all of those pillars. The second was their robust transition plan. They really have going through their proposal, they really have it down to a science, and both Ali, the safety and security manager, and I are confident that the transition will go really smoothly if we move to Universal. And the last, but certainly not least, was the actual cost. They come in at almost $400,000 less than Securitas, and we believe that they have the capability and depth of personnel to fulfill this contract, even though it is their price point is less than Securitas.
All right, so I have a couple questions because if you guys are not familiar with prior contracts, this can be a controversial contract. And one of the issues with this contract is equality and labor fair practices. So did you all dig on that? Because there were some practices, especially in this area of security, that, in case of a storm, people don't get paid, or, there's like a number of things of pay equity that happen in this area of security. Is that something that was asked, and do you know of what are their practices? Because that was something that has been quite a challenge in the past.
Yes, we did dig into that. And then we double checked that with their references. So they provided some really good references from the Mass DOT, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Capital Asset Management and Maintenance Department, and as well as Everett Public Schools. And we did not identify any challenges with those practices.
Okay. In terms of EDI, besides the hiring and the training and everything else, what is the nomenclature of their management team? Do you feel that it represents, a diverse group of management, or are we talking diversity in the lower ranks? Do you see diversity? Did you evaluate diversity at the various levels of the organization?
We did. We looked at a lot of the personnel that they provided in their proposal. And then even their director of diversity, equity, and inclusion, to identify whether or not they really, is this just a fluff, or is this something that they are invested in completely?
Okay, Joshua, that didn't answer my question. So my question is, did you review the nomenclature of their management team to see if it represents diversity?
When you say nomenclature, can you?
So for example, if you look at and I don't know their structure. So let's say, from their president down. So they may have a VP or senior directors. I don't know what their positions are. If you look at their senior leadership, let me put it that way. When you look at their senior leadership, do they represent, diversity?
Yes, I can say that.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Because, many companies say, yeah, we're committed to diversity. And then you look at the upper ranks and there's nothing. So that's what I mean by that. Because in this particular area, when you're talking security, of course, it's going to be diversity in the lower ranks because this is a low paying job. So what is important is to show that at the management level, there is diversity at the management level. It's not just on the lower ranks. That's what I was asking. All right, I appreciate that. Any questions from my fellow trustees? No? Okay.
No questions, but phenomenal points there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. With that, let's take a vote for recommending the following contracts to the full Board of Trustees. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to adopt both these votes, making recommendations to the full board.
Okay, second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions or any noes? All right. Recommendations approved. Thank you very much, Emily and Josh. All right, Sebastian. Sebastian on?
Yes, I'm coming on right now. Sorry.
Oh, there we go. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Okay, good. So just to give you a quick, we have one of our trustees who has a hard stop at 9:20. Is that
Yep.
correct, Navjeet?
No.
Yeah, yeah, and you get another one here as well because I have to chaperone a field trip to the
Oh,
JFK library today.
there
So
you go. So
for the
just
fifth grade.
perfect.
I
Good luck
explained
to
that to
you.
Sebastian. I explained that to Sebastian. Sebastian, you have control of the slides. You may see them on your, so you can turn to the slides quicker.
Perfect, thank you. So given that, Evelyn, if it's okay, I'll jump right in.
Oh, yeah.
Three high-level things that I want to talk to you about today is one, just a recap of performance from 2023. Was a good year on an absolute basis, so we'll touch on that. A quick market overview, because as quickly as markets evolve, they've evolved even quicker here over the first couple of months of the year. So some of what we have here may no longer pertain. And then, as we always do at this meeting of the year, is just a review of asset allocation and rebalancing. So we do want to talk to the group about a rebalancing recommendation to raise cash for spend, but also rebalance the portfolio towards some recommended changes that we'll be talking to you about here in just a moment. So if I move, there we go. First and foremost, just I know many of you are aware, but for perhaps some of the newer members, NEPC hosts an investor conference on an annual basis for all of our clients. This is something that happens locally in Boston, and usually it's traditionally been held in May. We've shifted to September this year, at the beginning of September, for a number of reasons, but as we all know, in May you can get a 90-degree day or you can get a blizzard. So what we're trying to do is actually adjust that to a great time of the year. This is really open just to our clients and your peers. So if you haven't had a chance to attend in the past, we'd certainly love to have you. And you'll be receiving a save the date from us throughout the summer. So if you're able to, that'd be fantastic. In terms of the portfolio itself, at a high level, this is a snapshot as of calendar year end. So as of calendar year end, we ended just north of $68 million in the fund, and we experienced an absolute return of about 12% at the portfolio level. So strong absolute returns. But what you'll see is that we trailed the benchmark here, which has a 15% return. And I'll touch on that in a moment when we go through some of the following slides. What's important to us, though, is even though there's a little bit of a trailing performance on a one-year basis, if you look at the 3, the 5, the 10-year, we're certainly performing both on an absolute basis as well as a relative basis to the benchmark that we have. This last year can really be summarized in 2 words: Magnificent Seven. And if you're not familiar with that terminology, these are 7 of the largest corporations in the world that also happen to be concentrated in the global markets, whether that's the 60-40 that you see here, whether that's the S&P 500. They make up about 30% of the S&P 500. They make up about 18% of the MSCI ACWI, which is that 60% piece, and a little bit north of 10% if you're looking at it at the 60-40 piece. And what drove those markets in the past year is the performance of those 7 stocks. So names like NVIDIA, Amazon, Apple, Tesla, Alphabet, all names that we're quite familiar with, and all names that together drove about 70% of the return of the market in the last year. So in such a narrow market, we wouldn't expect to necessarily outperform, but certainly on an absolute basis, we kept up. And then from an asset allocation perspective here in the bottom left, you'll see we're generally aligned with our targets. So throughout all of that, we were able to see strong performance overall, and we were able to capture that throughout the year. A little bit more detail here on the following page, you'll see where the returns did come from. As I mentioned, when you're seeing the return of the S&P 500 up 26%, now, if you take those 7 stocks away and that 70% return contribution, you can see how much of the return was driven just by that subset. So any pivot away from that exposure was a headwind for your managers. Any lean into that exposure was a benefit. I think when you're looking up and down the line here, generally speaking, we saw performance either meet or exceed expectations. The one that had a little bit of a headwind this year was Impact, the Global Resources Fund. This is an ESG or an impact-focused strategy. And when you look at their underlying weights, they are investing globally. They are investing across the US, Europe, and Japan. Throughout the last year, they've tilted their exposure a little bit more towards Europe, having exposure to those markets and a little bit away from the US. So naturally, that was a bit of a headwind as the US outperformed. And they also tilted a little bit towards the smaller and mid-cap part of the market, where a lot of their companies are looking for opportunities. So those two structural headwinds were something that impacted performance over the entire year. But if you look at the fourth quarter of the calendar year, they were actually able to outperform the broad markets as well. So over time, we expect this manager to do quite well for you, but there will be periods such as 2023 where they do experience a little bit of a headwind. That said, overall, very pleased with results on the whole. I'll stop there just to see if there are any questions around the portfolio or performance.
None for me.
Great. So moving on, there are a lot of slides in this section, and I've tried to cut them down, knowing that we might have a little bit of a time crunch. So perhaps what I'll just do is focus you on our current market outlook. Really, what are we seeing going forward, and how are we talking to clients about that? In general, if you kind of look at 2023 in a nutshell, what we saw is resilience. We had very strong growth numbers on the whole. We had good unemployment numbers. We had strong wage numbers. We had a consumer that was very resilient, meaning that they were spending specifically on services, less so on goods. And we saw an economy that generally pushed forward. If you were talking to us at the beginning of last year, especially in the January, February timeframe, the broader market, investors as a whole, felt that we would see some type of a pullback in the economy, and that the Fed, who controls rates at the short end of the curve, would have to pull back, meaning that we would go from where we are today at 5.5% or thereabouts, and we'll see that reduce over the year. Clearly, that did not happen. And as we were heading into the end of the year of 2023 and looking into 2024, the same views came about again, that we would see some type of a pullback, that the Fed has done enough to tame inflation, and we'd have to start to pull back in terms of rates. Well, following some of the data that came out after year end and throughout January, the market went from believing that we would see about 6 rate cuts, meaning going from 5.5% to 4%, to 2 rate cuts this year. So that resiliency, that those positive things that we saw throughout last year are continuing this year, and you're seeing that in the results of the market performance thus far. What's important to us, though, is that we want to make sure that we are still diversified. So what's driven some of the equity market performance is very similar to last year, and that is the Magnificent Seven. So when we're thinking about implementation, we certainly want to have exposure to those names, and that's our S&P 500 exposure. But we want to make sure that we're balanced in other areas in the event that the market decides to broaden out, and these 7 companies aren't what's driving performance anymore. We can't put all of our eggs in one basket here. So in your portfolio, we have that balance between the S&P 500 and Diamond Hill, which is a value-oriented manager. And then impacts, as I mentioned, their focus is less so in those mega cap names, and it's much broader as well. So we think we have great diversification here as well in terms of how the structure of the portfolio is today. Given where cash is and where rates are today, obviously your higher quality fixed income is a bit more attractive as well. Historically, we didn't want to necessarily hold cash because it was a drag on performance. Cash was earning 0. Equities and other markets were earning an attractive return. You didn't want to have that drag on results. Today, cash is earning 5%. Various fixed income investments are earning similar levels. So we're comfortable holding that exposure. And we'll talk about that in the asset allocation piece in a moment around what we think the balance of that should be within your fixed income allocation. And that ties to the last piece, which is exposure that we already have in the fund. So what that means for us as we are looking forward is that, oh, this is the fancy slide that would normally be talked to one after the other. What that means for us is that there are some challenges going forward. We're not immune to those, as you can see here. The economy has to adjust to a higher cost of capital. We as consumers probably understand that quite well. Hopefully no one is in the market for a new car or home today, because that's a big difference than it was just a few years ago. But that doesn't just necessarily stop there. Obviously, that cost of capital permeates throughout the economy, whether that's government or whether that's corporations. So it's an evolution and a regime change from what we were just experiencing 2 or 3 years ago. You know, I touched at the Magnificent Seven ad nauseum, so I won't necessarily look at that. But there are some other things around deficit spending that we're experiencing, and how do you grow out of that? You know, simply put, continued deficit spending by governments is traditionally inflationary, in that over time people want to be paid more to hold that debt. So there's only so many ways to grow out of that, and that is growing, cutting spending, or some other moves here. But it's something that we want to be mindful of as we look forward. Artificial intelligence, you know, this is no longer something that's in our phones or on our computers. It's something that's going to be broader based, and you're seeing many traditional companies who you wouldn't think of thinking about AI, starting to integrate that into their processes. The thing
we're going to lose 2 of our trustees in 3 minutes time. So if you've got a specific recommendation, let's just move to
Yeah,
that.
thank you, Mr.
Perfect.
President. I got to jump at 9:20 for sure.
Here we go.
So I certainly appreciate all the information, but I got to jump.
My apologies, David, and thank you for moving me right along. So to the snapshot, what are we recommending for you today? Not a whole lot in terms of the full strategy, but within the strategy, we're recommending minor changes to the asset allocation. And what this does is refocus on the areas where we think active management can add value and where we think opportunities are today. So within equities, it's pulling a little bit away from non-US equity and emerging to global. This will require an additional search, as at 15%, we're not comfortable having one manager managing that level of assets. In the fixed income side, what you'll see is a little bit of a shift towards credit. Credit is earning higher yields than cash is today, so we want to make sure that we're capturing that as well. This does not require any changes, in that we already have about a 12% allocation here between Vanguard and Manulife. So at the portfolio level, we are not changing risk and return characteristics. This is more of a tweak within the categories that gets us positioned better for what the forward-looking opportunity looks like. And then the secondary part of this is that we do have to raise first spend for the year. That's about $3.8 million. And this rebalancing recommendation here covers what that spend amount is, and then gives you a sense of what we would be recommending for an allocation to another global equity manager, which we would run a search for you to achieve this.
So although the individual recommendations look like a policy change because they are within the broader categories and keeping those percentages the same, this is essentially an administrative adjustment and not a change in policy per se.
Well, I guess maybe just where the change in policy is that multi-asset reduces a little bit and fixed income increases a little bit. So there's a minor policy change there, but on the whole, David, you're absolutely right. This is more administrative.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so we're gonna be at time. So my recommendation is that we take this topic and then dig a little deeper on the next meeting.
Okay.
So this kind of preps the conversation. So Pamela, if we could just encourage that prior to our next meeting, that would be great. If people can just dig into these slides and be prepared to discuss further, that would be great. And then we can take a vote at that time in terms of what changes we need to do. And
it doesn't require a vote, Evelyn, just to make it clear. This does not require a vote. The next meeting is May 14th, so you wouldn't be able to make any changes until after that. I just want to.
Yeah, but I heard, one thing I heard is there's a policy change here.
Oh, okay. So, in regards to the asset that he was talking about.
Very minor. So Evelyn, maybe just on this slide here, and maybe Sean or Emily, I don't know if she's still on, the timing of when these funds are needed for the spend. Can we wait till May, or is that something that we'd want to have ready and available before the next meeting?
Yeah, it sounds like if we can't wait till May, that's a little too far.
So maybe call for a special meeting in April?
Well,
I think we've got two items, two components to this. Some of this rebalancing is purely administrative, so we can probably meet the first availability threshold that way. But anything beyond that, I agree with Evelyn that there should be a follow-up meeting
Right.
to review. And if we're actually changing policy allocations at the category level, then that does require a vote.
Right.
So that we can certainly talk to you in May about. That is not as pressing. That'll give us time to actually run a global equity search. So we'll come to you with the full recommendation. But
Yep.
this piece here, I'd say we certainly want to at the very least vote on just the 3.8 million.
Yeah. So I don't have a problem, doing a redistribution within categories, so we can move ahead with that. Because all you're doing is just sort of rebalancing. The question that I have though, is it rebalancing within, I think we're not adding anybody new, we're just rebalancing within categories.
To start
Yeah.
with.
Yep. So we can say, yes, move forward with that. And then any new managers that we need to add or policy changes, then we'll do it on a special meeting.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm clear on what you were saying now, Evelyn.
It's okay. All right. We're good?
We are.
Okay. So I lost my trustees. And then so thank you, Sebastian.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Anytime.
Any new business?
No, I do think we can make Sebastian's presentation the main topic at a next meeting, subject to any new votes, so we can do a deeper dive. And in addition to our existing members today, hopefully we'll have the additional benefit of Jeff and John.
Okay.
Jeff and John have these slides, just so everyone knows. I can send a special message after this though, in regards to some of the points that you wanted to specify before the next meeting.
Perfect. All right. So we don't have new business. I don't see any public comment. All right. With that, we adjourn.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Only thing, can I say one thing? Evelyn, did you want to agree to the rebalancing? Sean made a note asking that they should make the distribution now and rebalance later.
Yeah, that's what we just talked about.
Okay, so I want to make sure that was clear that was.
Yeah, that's what we just talked about.
Okay, I was reading this comment.
Yeah, we can move money within categories, but then policy changes and additional managers will be deferred for later.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good one.